I grew up in Oxford. I lived there until I was 15 years old. And as I have written in this book, Oxford was a wonderful place at that time in the 50s and 60s for children to grow up. We had a lot of freedom. Our house, the house that I grew up in, was about a mile from the square in the center of town. I had a good friend whose house was much closer to the square, and we could run out her back door and walk a couple of blocks to the square. The square was the center of everything then. Very different from what it is now. It was today the square in Oxford is pitched mainly to tourists and perhaps to students and to the folks who moved to Oxford from other parts of the country, many of whom have a good bit of money. But when we were growing up, the square was with the courthouse in the center, of course, and the Confederate statue on the south side of the square. And around the square were all sorts of little stores. There was what we called then a 10-cent store, a dime store. There were 2 or 3 jewelry stores. There were 2 or 3 drug stores. There were several small grocery stores. It was a working square. It was a square where people went to shop for what they needed, be that prescriptions or groceries, or there were a couple of clothing stores. One of them still there on the square, Nelson's. The other one was Friedman's. Mr. Friedman was one of 2 Jewish families in town, and so it was not a place of leisure shopping. It was a place of working shopping. The post office was on one side of the square. There was a funeral home and dry cleaners off to one side. So it's a very different place than it is today. And it was very accessible to us. The town library was in the courthouse. We, at that time, probably a population of about 5,000 townspeople in Oxford. And we had the run of the place. We could come and go pretty much as we pleased. So I guess the bottom line is that it was a very secure childhood. Certainly for white children, it was a very secure childhood. And we felt, as far as I know, I and my friends felt safe and secure, something you'd hope for every child about his or her childhood. But we really did feel it. By the way, I'll add one other thing. One thing that's on the square today, of course, and known nationally, is square books. When I was growing up in Oxford, there was not only no bookstore on the square, there was really no bookstore in town. The Rebel Press, which sold office supplies and did printing for various customers, had a small shelf of children's books, Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, Cherry Ames, and that was the source of books in Oxford. There was, of course, a textbook store on the university campus, but in the town of William Faulkner, there was no ready source of books. Mr. Reed, who was one of the owners of Gathright and Reed drugstore, could order books for you, and he happily ordered them and stocked a few of Faulkner's books in his drugstore. But otherwise, there were no books readily available other than the town library, which was very small, or the university library, where one needed to have some sort of access through parents or brother or sister, a student. So books were not readily available in the Oxford I grew up in.